Hi, and welcome to another edition of Danny Brown Talks Phoenix. I am your host, Danny Brown, and this week I am joined by Thomas Maynard of the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So I'm a huge fan of Greater Phoenix Economic Council, often referred to as GPEC.
Yep.
So for our audience, why don't you explain a little bit about what you do, what GPEC's responsible for, and what you guys are doing for the Phoenix area?
Yeah, happy to do it. And again, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So GPEC is the Regional Economic Development Organization. So really what that means is we are really our purpose is to help grow the Greater Phoenix economy. My specific role is to help companies as they're looking to grow and expand, help them land in Greater Phoenix. Our business attraction team has probably 6 or 7 people on it. We've been around for 30 years. We celebrated our 30th anniversary this fall, which was great.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a big accomplishment.
Yeah.
And we're the makeup of our organization. We're publicly and privately funded. We're technically a nonprofit, so our funding comes from the cities. There's 22 cities and towns throughout the Greater Phoenix area that are members. Then we have 160 private companies that are banks and law firms and anybody who wants to see the economy grow here in Greater Phoenix. So our board of directors is made up of the mayors and the political leadership in town, as well as the business leaders. And really our task is helping grow our market here.
Very nice. So I started hearing about you guys actually through training and classes that I was taking for residential real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And when the housing market collapsed, the Phoenix economy was so highly based on construction and housing. That's what we were known for. And
Yep.
So when the housing market collapsed in 2007, 2008, it really wrecked our economy. We were one of the worst hit in the country. And so I started learning more and more about what you guys were doing to try and attract different industries to the valley,
Mm-hmm.
so that Phoenix wouldn't be so reliant on construction and the housing market. And, I just read a statistic the other day that as of this month, different sectors are now outpacing the construction industry, which I think pretty much is as a direct result of you guys and all your hard work, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a partnership. So GPEC is a cog in the overall economic development machine. So there's, we obviously represent all of the cities, and each city has their own economic development team that's trying to promote and grow their local economy, but it all feeds into this regional system. And then of course we have our partners at the state, who are also important parts of the overall machine. But you're exactly right. When you look at what happened in 2007, even go back to why we were founded, it was back in 1989. There was an article that came out that said Phoenix, it's the boom town gone bust. And the whole point of the article was, people are moving to Arizona. That's great. They're buying cheap houses, and there's plenty of room to grow because it's all desert land that's going to expand. But there's no real base industry that's driving their economy. And at the time, the political leadership, the city leadership at the time, said, hey, we really need to come together and have some sort of regional group to make sure that we have an advocate, that we have a seat at the table. Then also when companies are looking to really grow and expand, that the Greater Phoenix area is on the map. So that was really the genesis of our organization. Again, going back 30 years. So as we're coming out of the Great Recession now, 10 years of economic expansion, the demographics of our economy are changing, the makeup of really what's driving our growth. Construction, housing will always be a big part of our market, but right now you look at industries like healthcare is booming here. Manufacturing is continuing to grow. Northrop Grumman, as an example, made a major announcement a week ago that they're doubling down on their campus in Chandler, and those are very significant, high-paying jobs. A company that anybody wants in their backyard, and they're building a massive campus. So we're confident that because we're a little bit more diversified in what makes up our economy, we're going to be in a better position for if and when the next downturn comes.
So what are, there's a lot of companies I think that are moving here, and, because you guys are responsible for selling them on the idea of Phoenix, what are some of the major reasons why people are moving to the Phoenix metro area?
Yeah, and there's there's a number of different things of why companies are moving here, but fundamentally, companies are trying to mitigate their risk. They're looking to grow their operations, and that when I say mitigate risk, that can mean cost, that can mean political certainty, or making sure that we're in a business-friendly environment. Luckily, Arizona checks a lot of those boxes, but by far the number one factor for where companies are looking to grow and expand is labor.
Sure.
They're looking to find talent. They need to identify markets where they can sustainably grow. And Phoenix, luckily, is the Maricopa County now is the third year in a row the fastest growing county in the U.S. We have people moving in here. We have people going to ASU and other universities. ASU is the largest university in the U.S., so we're pumping out talent. So again, those fundamentals are making a lot of sense for why companies want to be here. And it also helps that we're so close to California. We get of our overall pipeline, and we're working with plus or minus 300 companies right now. About 25 to 30% of them are from California. So they're based in California. They want to be close to the customers, but they don't want to be in the regulatory environment and cost environment that California poses.
Are you fearful at all that I've been saying for a long time that the number one import for Arizona is Californians.
Yeah.
It seems like all the time, real estate wise, we're helping people, who are leaving California because of the taxes, the cost of the living, all those things. What I grew up here and I'm a native, and what tends to happen when people move here is they bring all their stuff with them. So like I never had allergies until everybody moved here and they brought all their plants with them, and now I have allergies. Are you afraid that when people move here that they can bring some of that ideology, not whether I don't want to get into debate whether it's right or wrong,
sure,
but bringing some of those political views and now all of a sudden we're not as business friendly? Is that a fear?
I think that can always be a concern. I think what's in our favor is, and again, we do this for a living, we look at where our demographics are today and where we're going to grow, and we are going to be a much more diverse community as we go forward. We're actually going to be probably a majority region somewhere between 2032, 2033, which is outpacing the national average. So we are the makeup of what makes Phoenix is definitely going to change. What I'm optimistic about is when you talk to people from Arizona and you ask them, you take a poll of where you're from. It's rare to find people that are from Arizona. Now that's changing as we get more and more generational folks here.
It's rare for people in like their mid to late 30s like myself, but kid-wise, there's quite a few natives now.
So yeah, as we extrapolate that further down the line, we'll see more and more of that. But the advantage I think there is, you don't have to be from here to actually make a difference. There is a true meritocracy here that you can. If you are new to market and you want to make a difference in the community, I think we're very open and welcoming with that. So I do think it's a fair point to see, how is this going to change our demographics. What we're trying to really focus on is how can we attract the highest quality talent here? Because the reality is, these high-end jobs, whether it be software development or advanced manufacturing, they're going to require skills that there's a gap in our market. There's a gap in a lot of different markets.
Sure.
So if we can recruit that top level talent, and on our end, how we play into that, if we can recruit the companies that are hiring for these roles and we can get that top end talent here, I think it's going to be a win-win for the region for sure.
Absolutely. I follow you guys on Instagram, and I recommend that everybody do.
Yeah.
And you guys have a pretty funny ad that's running in California, probably directed at small businesses, large businesses, recruiting people to leave California to come to Arizona.
Yeah, we launched that over the summer called California Struggles, and really the whole point, and it's somewhat humorous in nature. We have an account that we kind of poke fun at at our friends over there out west, with the whole purpose of showcasing the business opportunity of what Arizona has to offer. And we tell people all the time, part of the reason why Arizona is succeeding so well right now is because California is continuing to grow companies, continue to pump out venture capital. So we're happy. We realize that, we're in some ways partners with California. They're going to continue to pump out their companies, and we'd be more than happy to be the output and the growth mode for a lot of these groups. But yeah, that was a campaign that our team came up with. We were pretty happy with that. We got some pretty good response from both local and California-based companies. But really, the whole point is, we're open for business. We want our perfect project is someone that wants to hire a bunch of people, either right out of college or experienced hires. We'd love to talk to them because I think there's a lot to offer in Greater Phoenix.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. The weather's great. The cost of living is relatively cheap. We have great housing. The traffic has gotten, worse as more people have moved here, but our infrastructure is pretty good at supporting it.
Yeah.
I can still, when it's not rush hour, zip around the freeways at 80 with no problem. You can't do that in California, regardless of what time of day it is.
We're lucky that we grew and this was a much bigger conversation than GPEC, but when we grew as a region, the leaders that knew that, all right, let's have a regional transportation system to where it's going to be easy to get around. And you couple that with, we built the highways first, then the light rail comes in. We're only 10 years into the light rail, and that's going to continue to expand.
Which I'm really glad that got passed, and, stick it to the Koch brothers that were funding that anti-light rail campaign.
I mean, I think it speaks to, at least with the city of Phoenix voters, that transportation is an important issue for them, and
yes.
they want a multimodal transportation initiative for the region. So, we're going to continue to mature on that. We're not, like a DC or New York or Boston in terms of, it's not necessarily a commuter train today, but however, as we build out our employment corridors, as especially downtown Phoenix continues to see more and more investment, I think it's going to be a huge deal. And plus, students coming from ASU's campus to downtown campus, which now are the two biggest campuses for ASU, we're continuing to see that being a major player and a major driver of economic growth in our market.
If you talk to anyone who runs the light rail, the one recommendation I have is that it should have the right of way with traffic.
There you go.
That the light rail should not have to stop at red lights, that traffic should have to stop at red lights. The fact that it takes 45 minutes to get from Tempe to Phoenix is a challenge, and I think that would kind of solve that. So if you ever have a conversation with those people, that's just my 2 cents.
We'll bring it up. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Yeah.
So what are some of your biggest success stories? I know we talked a lot about companies coming from California, but you're attracting companies from all over the country, and not just in Phoenix. You're attracting them to multiple different communities and doing a lot in Chandler. The West Valley's growing like crazy. So what are some of the big success stories, and what other states are you pulling people from?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's so many to choose from. We're fortunate enough, so we measure our kind of activity on a fiscal year. So last fiscal year ending on June 30, we helped 50 companies expand and relocate into the market.
That's amazing.
It's our best year on record.
How many, do you happen to know roughly how many jobs that equated to?
That was give or take like 8,600 jobs.
Wow.
Of new jobs to the community, which is great. And it's a pretty diverse set of central core, city of Phoenix itself, East Valley, obviously Scottsdale gets a lot of wins, but even Mesa, Chandler, Gilbert are seeing a lot of new investment. Those are major players in terms of, if you want to have a large back office type function, there's plenty of opportunities there. On the west side, Goodyear has been incredible in terms of new investment, new companies coming in. We can go down the line of all the East Valley or the West Valley communities, with the 303 now being complete. Those transportation options are now going to, I think, lead to more and more investment.
And the 202 expansion as well. It's really going to open up the West Valley.
It's a good point.
From the East Valley.
Yeah, we're talking to people all the time and highlighting how this West Valley East Valley connection is going to make. And I think it's going to make a huge difference. Today, a lot of that, if you go on I-10 heading out west into California, a lot of that activity right there is your e-commerce distribution type, employers, because they want to be on I-10 and get to California quickly. I do think with that highway going in, there's going to be a lot more advanced manufacturing groups that are looking in that area, because now they can pull from the talent that is. I will also say this: there's a lot of talent in the West Valley that is commuting into. If you look at the busiest traffic areas on the morning commute or afternoon commute, it's I-10. And it's people coming from the West Valley that are commuting into Phoenix or Tempe or Chandler to go work.
That's because all the affordable housing's out on the west side.
So I think there's a huge opportunity there.
Yeah.
A really smart company is going to put an operation out there and going to be the employer of choice, because instead of people commuting into Central Core, they're going to be able to have a reverse commute or commute within a 10 to 15-minute drive of their affordable house. And
yeah,
it's
I mean,
gonna be a great.
the numbers that I saw recently, one of the fastest growing cities in the country was Buckeye.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is just wild to me.
It's incredible. And City of Buckeye is actually bigger landmass wise than City of Phoenix.
Yeah,
People don't
my
realize
dad
that.
told me that, and I was like, "Get out of here!"
Yeah.
Google it and look
It's
it
true.
up, and it's true.
It's true.
And
So
they also have
that's-
their own water
Yeah.
out there, their own water rights that they haven't really even tapped into yet. So
there's a huge opportunity there. And we model that too to see where is our region going to grow, and the answer, it's going to grow everywhere.
Yeah.
But the lion's share of that growth is going to be West Side.
So you may or may not know, this is a genuine question of
Sure.
curiosity. With Microsoft, Bill Gates buying all that land out west, do you have any insight into what is going to happen with that?
Yeah, a lot of that's been kind of under wraps. There's been obviously some publicity out there of really what does that mean. I think it's a long-term play out there, and we've heard some really cool and smart city ideas, and they're going to build this community to be a really kind of forward-looking, futuristic part of the region, which I know it'll get there eventually. But we also know that that's a pretty strategic land holding with the new investments going in. I know that their Interstate 11 alignment is going to go out into that general area in sometime in the near future. And I'll put air quotes around near future because it's a federal process and it's going to take time to make that happen.
Takes a long time. Yeah, absolutely.
However, it's very encouraging to see new investments coming into our market, especially with the this purchase. I think that Phoenix as a region is on the map for nationally and internationally focused companies that want to make a big splash, which is great, because again, 10 years ago, that was probably not the case. And now with our recent successes, with the great things that are happening across the market, I think we're getting more and more on the map.
Yeah, I mean, to just speak on some of your recent successes, AT&T is opening a $7.6 billion call center in Mesa that's going to employ over 500 people. CarMax is creating more than 400 jobs at a new contact center in Tempe, which is great. State Farm, you guys are responsible for State Farm relocating that beautiful campus on Tempe Town Lake. Yeah, I had some friends that worked at a Fidelity branch at the Silicon Valley National Bank buildings that are right there. They didn't like the traffic that it caused on Rio Salado, but I mean, it's a beautiful campus, and really, I think put Tempe Town Lake kind of on the map as a kind of the center of Tempe.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see. And I just went to a celebration recently. It was the 20th year anniversary of Tempe Town Lake,
which people battled. I was a kid, Mayor Neil
Giuliano?
at the time, and he was vilified for passing that and putting that in, and now it's just kind of a treasure for the middle of Phoenix.
It's the top. It's the top of the line in terms of the high watermark for real estate, commercial real estate here, and that's driven by people want to be close to the university and they want to be close to some cool amenity. And Tempe Town Lake is definitely that. So he was there at the celebration to kind of ruse in the fact that now that there was probably a lot of naysayers and who cares? You're just gonna put water into this old riverbed. Who is that really gonna make a difference? And now it's incredible what's happened there. Tempe's done a really good job of creating that community feel. And people love it. So it's really, really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, and to touch on some others, you guys are responsible for Amazon opening its third location, if I'm correct, in Goodyear, which you already mentioned. And then healthcare, again, is a big factor that you guys are responsible for moving a lot of healthcare facilities here as well.
Yeah, if you look at the 50 locates, the 50 companies that we helped move over, it's a nice mix. And you kind of mentioned, there's your Fortune 500s that are looking nationally to source this operation, and we're competing with markets like Dallas and Atlanta, and now like Nashville. Nashville is becoming the
super
cool
popular
new hip place that all the young people want to live. So we're winning our fair share of those deals, but we also get probably companies you never heard of, or but they're a disruptive technology and insurance tech, or a financial tech company out of the Bay Area in New York. And again, they're really looking to access the labor market, but not be in one of those tier one cost markets. So it's probably us and a Denver and a Salt Lake City that we're competing with. So it's nice to see that we're winning both ends of those deals. The larger Fortune 500s and kind of these small scrappy startups that are, looking to kind of disrupt a certain industry. And we have a pitch for both of them, which is great.
So are there things that kind of your average Phoenician can do to help encourage, the growth that's happening in terms of, not necessarily how they vote, but just are there things that they can do to make sure that this growth kind of continues and ultimately make your guys' job easier?
You know what? I think, this is really, really cool to see. There's more of a Phoenix pride here, and that's becoming more and more evident. And
I mean, I see State 48 shirts like
everywhere. And how cool is that? How cool is you go to a Phoenix Rising game and you drive by on the 202, it's like, oh, that just looks like a little dinky stadium that was just put up haphazardly. But you go there and you feel like you're at like a European soccer match with all of the passion and so that is really cool to see. And that, I think that makes a difference when companies are making that decision. It's obviously there's the spreadsheet. It has to make sense dollars and cents wise, but they also want to be in a community that's proud of who they are. That's welcoming. So I would say that we luckily have a great reputation of being an open and welcoming environment. And again, you don't have to be from here to fit in.
Yeah. And I hear that a lot from, we help a lot of out-of-state clients, and they're constantly telling me how friendly people are here at the grocery stores or, going to the gym or whatever. Just people are genuinely nice.
It makes a huge difference. And it's kind of like we have some of those Midwestern roots. And to kind of touch on a little earlier point, where are people moving from? There's a ton of people here that are moving from, Michigan, and all over the Midwest, Chicago. We become Chicago's biggest suburb, it seems like, in the month of March with everyone going to Cubs and White Sox games.
Yeah.
And now there's like a Lou Malnati's and a Portillo's around. And, so there's a lot of those Midwestern roots, but we also kind of have the open, free-flowing feeling of California. So we're kind of have it's kind of like a unique aspect of what it means to be
kind of
Arizona.
Unique marriage of the Midwest and the West Coast. We're like right in the middle, and this merger of both kind of ways of thinking and philosophy. It's
and hopefully the best of both worlds. That's what we're trying to promote. And it's okay. It's actually really cool that's how we describe. People ask us, what is the culture in Phoenix? And that's what we kind of describe. It's a little bit of a melting pot, but we have that established Midwestern roots. There's a lot of when the Bears come to play the Cardinals or the Cubs play here, you'll see the stands. It's almost there's a lot of blue in the stands when the Cubs.
Yeah, it's almost an away game for the poor Cardinals.
So I think for us, that's gonna there's a little bit part of us that we'd love to see that local team pride, and we're seeing that continue to change. However, I think it also speaks to like, hey, we're welcoming, and we'd love to have you here, and we'd love to see you grow. So.
Yeah, one of the things that's been so neat for me to see is Phoenix actually develop a sense of culture.
Yeah.
And the food scene has just been blowing up over the last, 7-8 years maybe, where when I was growing up, it was nice to go to Chili's or Applebee's, but now it's you have all these smaller mom or pop type semi-fine dining places popping up everywhere, and the nightlife, the shows, all the stuff to do. It's just constant,
and it's different. I think the best part, there's different flavors depending on like what lifestyle you want to live. If you want to be like the Old Town Scottsdale era with all these outdoor shops, and you can walk there, and you can be that young millennial family and live in South Scottsdale and be close to that. That's great. You have Gilbert, which put a lot of investment and effort to making their downtown heritage district something that's cool and walkable. But again, to your point, you walk down the street, you're not seeing Applebee's and Chili's, you're seeing a Joyride Tacos and Postino's and all these local joints that are now having their secondary location in that downtown. So you can almost have the best of both worlds. You can live out in the suburbs, but you could still go to the restaurants that you would if you lived kind of near the urban core.
One of the coolest things, we don't have that true, downtown Phoenix is great, don't get me wrong, but we don't have that true downtown like your Chicago's or,
We have multiple ones.
Yeah. So all these cities have done a phenomenal job of creating these bubbles where you're within your 5 mile radius and you've got all these cool options. Downtown Mesa has really turned around and become a place to go. Downtown Chicago or downtown Chandler, whoever's running the town of Gilbert is a genius, or the people who are running it are geniuses because of all of the infrastructure and things that they've brought into those areas. And Peoria is finding itself on the map, and just it's no matter what community you end up moving to, everything you need, everything you want to do is really within that 5 mile radius.
And that's what people want. They want to be somewhere close by, somewhere that's cool. And people ask us,
you don't have to commute into the city.
Exactly. Where are the cool spots? It's like, well, get a pen and paper down, because it's going to be a while. We're going to have to go through all these really cool things. And that's really a cool part of the job, is when we're working with these companies and they maybe have never been here, and we really get to tell that story on a daily basis. That's what's really cool.
That's so funny, because that's one of my favorite things when we have out-of-state clients is they don't really know where they want to be. So I feel like our jobs are almost somewhat similar, except I'm in like residential. So I get to tour them around. And I constantly have people text me like, hey, where's a good restaurant? It's like, well, what part of the valley are you going to be in? Because they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Or, what do I do? And, so I've got to figure out what part of town they're going to be in. And like I said, when we have these out-of-state clients coming in, we're not just showing them houses. We're like touring them through, the areas that they want to be in. So there's very much kind of like it's synchronicity that exists between what you do and what we're doing.
Yeah, it's funny too, because sometimes, depending on the client, it's very data driven, and we're passing spreadsheets back and forth, and it's all about the numbers. More often than not, they just want a feel of the market. So we're almost being a tour guide, and here's what's happening, and it's very much we're that liaison for the community to try to showcase what's going on.
That's so awesome. So I wanted to touch also, being that you're part of the Economic Council, I wanted to get your take on some of the recent news that's going on in the economy. And I've been saying for a long time that Phoenix is pretty well insulated, if we do get hit by a recession. So I wanted to kind of get your take on, just the current state of the economy, maybe on a national level versus the current state of the economy for, the greater Phoenix area.
Yeah. So, and this is obviously something that we monitor pretty closely. Nationally, you look at the jobs reports that come up monthly, it still tends to be trending in a positive direction. Unemployment is low. Companies are still interested in growing and expanding into the U.S. The big caveat there is, this U.S.-China, trade negotiations and discussions, or trade war, or however you want to characterize it. It's a big question mark. And then obviously the elephant in the room with the election coming up in a year now, there's a lot of people that I think we're going to start seeing, okay, let's see what happens at that point. Locally and through our regional, perspective, we haven't seen a blip on the radar yet. We know that it's going to happen sometime. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, that the fortunate part is the way that our economy is made up today. We're not oversubscribed on one industry over another. There's still a pretty healthy amount of our legacy companies, aerospace and defense and semiconductors. We mentioned Northrop. Intel is continuing to invest in their campus. So those are kind of our base industries that will hopefully always be here and will always be a driver of our economy. We're seeing these really cool new industries, whether it be financial services, like the fintech, insurance tech, even data centers are really making a big investment in our market.
Data centers are huge here.
People don't really realize that, and there's not maybe a huge job component for data centers. However, there's a lot of economic impact that happens because of that. I mean, there's all this servers and capital investment and equipment that goes into these facilities, and they're constantly renewed on a 3 to 5 year basis. There's new investment going in, so that's more money and new money going into the tax rolls. So it's a significant economic player, even though there might not be 1,000 jobs within a data center. So we're still pretty confident of what the outlook looks like for our market, but we're constantly looking at that because we know that when the next recession turns, that we'll always be a market where companies will look, do I double down on Phoenix, or do I take operations out of Phoenix? The advantage for us is, instead of having what used to be, a lot of the call centers, maybe distribution centers, lower end jobs, we're seeing a lot of the higher end jobs coming. So that leads us to believe that they're probably going to stay here if and when the next recession comes.
Would you say that, if a recession does hit, that it's going to be starkly different than the one that was in 07, 08?
I would, yeah, we're pretty confident that we're not going to be in the recession as long or as deep as we were. And that was a pretty historic recession as well.
I mean, it was the worst one since the Great Depression.
So if that, knock on wood, the next one that happens won't be as significant. However, the fundamentals are there. We're in a much better, much healthier position, so that when that does happen, that will be.
It's just amazing to me how quickly you guys have been able to enact and transition in 10 years since the last recession, how diverse our economy is in such a short period of time. I had no idea until you sat down that you guys have been around for 30 years. But I'm also only 38. Yeah. So, I've only been really paying attention for probably the last 10, which is why I know about you guys now. But
well, we don't do a good job promoting ourselves, and that's somewhat intentional. Our role is to help grow the market.
You're a silent hero.
You'll never see, GPEC leads the way in getting a company to come here. Our role is we want you to get here. We want to give credit where credit is due, and we're happy to be a resource.
So can you touch on a little bit why the Phoenix unemployment rate might be slightly higher than what the national unemployment rate is?
Yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon. And the reality is that's a pretty historical norm of, even, if you look at the national unemployment rate, Phoenix is always a little bit higher. Mm-hmm. There's a couple things of really what could be driving that. One, especially now, we're getting a lot of people who are relocating, and you would know this. People are relocating for a job, mm-hmm. But if they're moving here for the job and their spouse needs now a role, now they're looking actively in the Arizona market for jobs. So that can help drive our unemployment up. Honestly, on our end, there's that healthy balance because we're competing with a lot of different regions where their unemployment rate is 2%, 2.5%, 3%. So being a little bit north of that is actually an advantage for us, because when companies are looking to come here, they need to hire folks. So there's a little bit more of a available labor pool for them to tap into. So you got to be careful how you kind of phrase that. But for us, we actually use that as a glass half full. Now, obviously, there's a limit there. However, we would almost rather be in this position rather than full employment when it would be tough for these folks to move in.
Sure. And then with the growth in our manufacturing centers, is that being negatively impacted heavily by the issues between the U.S. and China?
So on one hand, I think it's very dependent on the type of companies, what they're looking to manufacture, obviously where their customer base is, where their supply chain is. So there are some companies projects that we're actively working on that they're kind of saying, hey, we're going to pump the brakes until we figure out what really happens. Because really, again, what these companies are trying to do is mitigate their risk. So maybe where it goes one way or the other, they could probably adapt and change to that. But with them not knowing, they don't want to make that investment and make that bet right now. Now, that being said, there's still a lot of groups, a pretty significant amount, that are either almost primarily domestically focused, or they get their supply chain all domestically sourced. So the tariff discussion doesn't affect them as much. And there's also some companies that are just being, hey, we need to produce and we need to make a bet and we need to do it now. So no matter what happens on a federal level and on an international level, we need to make our choice. So I mentioned all that doesn't make a difference for sure. And are there some companies that are probably maybe pressing the brakes? Yes. Yeah. However, we're still pretty active in that space. And we're confident in our ability to compete for those projects, because there's a good story to tell for Greater Phoenix for manufacturing.
So a question that I get a lot from people who come to visit Phoenix is water.
Yep.
So I'm sure that you get asked this
All
question
the
a
time.
lot as well. I know it's not in our notes,
Yeah.
but it just kind of dawned on me. So what do you tell people when they ask you about, you're in the middle of the desert, the climate's kind of changing, regardless of what you think.
Yeah.
What is the water situation for Phoenix?
So the advantage of there's actually a pretty good water story to tell. So the advantage for Phoenix, and if you compare us to California or Nevada, the Colorado River, serviced by the Central Arizona Project, still services only about 40% of our water allocation. We also get a pretty significant amount of our water from delivered by SRP from our local in-state rivers. All the runoff of the White Mountains and up north in Flagstaff comes down. And there's also a significant portion that we get from our groundwater. And there's strict rules and regulations on that, obviously. The reality is we use this stat all the time, we're using the same water levels as we were in 1957. And people have no idea that that's the case. And the reason being is still even today, about 75% of where the water goes here in Arizona is for agricultural use.
Yes.
So and that takes a much more significant amount of water than, let's say, 100 acres of houses or businesses or even manufacturing facilities. So as we're continuing to grow as a market, and again, we're probably going to get plus or minus 1 million more people here in the next 10 years, we could still stay at the same or similar water levels because we're converting ag land into now these master plan communities. So even though our population is going up, our water usage doesn't also go up like that. So it's a significant issue, but being from Arizona, our leadership here, they always know that water is going to be an issue. So we've been planning this for decades, where we see our partners over in California and other markets where they're just now getting a water plan together. So we've been on top of this for a long time. It's always going to be top of mind in Arizona. We're pretty confident in our abilities. And even now, if you want to do a new development into in the community, there has to be a 100-year water supply assurance within the market. That's a non-starter before you even get started. So it's always top of mind, and it's something that we're going to continue to proactively plan for, because it's going to be a huge issue. But the good news is we're not behind the 8 ball. We've been planning on this for a long, long time.
Yeah, that's I did not know the statistic about the that we've not used any more water since 1957.
Yeah.
I will absolutely start implementing that fact right away. But I tell people very similar things, that the agriculture is kind of getting pushed out, that it takes a lot less water to run a household than it does to run a farm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's we use that, and we get those talking points from the Department of Water and from SRP, and we have it in our standard deck, and it's really what makes the difference is we have a diversity of where the water is going. Let's look at Las Vegas as an example, where it's mostly just, commercial, residential. There's not a lot of agriculture there. So for them, they're more hamstrung in terms of how they can allocate their water and where that's going. Whereas us, it's because we're a little bit more diverse. And again, as our growth is going to go into this ag land that now has a pretty large amount of allotment of water, we can still sustainably grow.
Very nice. So we covered a lot of different topics. Was there anything that you wanted to touch on that maybe we didn't cover in this episode?
We covered a lot. And I'll just, close on, we're happy to be a resource. Each city has their own economic development team. So if you want more information from a hyper local level, I would recommend reaching out to your local economic development department. They're great partners. We work with them really well. You're always happy to reach out to GPEC. It's gpec.org. We have great data on there on why industries are coming here, kind of the pitch for why Phoenix. So if you want just high level information, go there. Feel free to reach out to me. We're happy to be a resource. And if anybody wants to hear the why Greater Phoenix pitch, we're happy to do that. So,
and I definitely recommend following you guys on Facebook and Instagram. They're constantly putting out really good content on why Phoenix is as badass as it is. I mean, this is why I started this podcast, because there's just so much cool stuff happening in Phoenix, and you guys are the silent hero. I mean, you're the one behind the curtain kind of making a lot of this stuff happen, and I'm super thankful that you took time out of your schedule to be here today to talk to our audience, and hopefully we can have you back.
Happy to do it anytime. Would love to do it, and yeah, anything you do to help promote the market, we're happy to do it. So thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next time on another edition of Danny Brown Talks Phoenix.